It's Trey Kay, and from West Virginia Public Broadcasting at PRX, you're listening to Us and Them, the show that tells the stories about the things that divide us. Election day is behind us, but our country seems as divided as ever. Pandemic cases spike while we argue over public health requirements. We all want our truth to be the truth. Given all that, it's a tough time to sit down with people across the divide. But there are some brave souls willing to do just that. In this episode, my virtual dinner party guests are back. This time for dessert. Our Us and Them dinner party episode, maybe you heard it, brought together people I know whose views span the social and political horizon. We talked about hard stuff, the pandemic, race relations, and politics. My guests spoke their mind, but there were no attacks or soapboxes. So I invited everyone back for a post-election conversation. They all said yes, and once again, we found our way to a virtual table through video chat. Everyone was there,
Yeah.
Dessert in hand.
Well, I got the cheapest, most obvious kind of ice cream there is at Rite Aid just now. Maybe it was Walgreens, but it's very thick. It's very Oreos, and I figure if my blood pressure gets really up in this conversation, I could just take a spoon of this, and it might go down a bit. This is especially for if we start talking about like Trump and Stephen Sondheim or whoever stealing the election, you know.
At our house, some people have a therapy dog, I guess. At our house, we've turned to ice cream. So,
I think you and a lot of America.
Yeah.
My guests, who were mostly strangers before our first dinner party, were connecting, like friends.
I made that Mexican fruitcake. It's got nuts and pineapple in it.
Our ground rules were the same, to listen respectfully and not grandstand. We wanted to see if people from across West Virginia could talk to each other. We took on subjects that many avoid, especially when our views differ. Our post-election dessert conversation came after Joe Biden was declared the president-elect and presumptive winner. Donald Trump continued with legal challenges to cast doubt on the election outcome. I wondered how my guests were feeling about all that, but first I wanted to check in on how the pandemic was affecting their lives. Our virtual dessert party came just as a predicted cold weather spike in COVID cases hit many parts of the country. In West Virginia, the number of COVID hospitalizations and deaths were setting new records.
I felt done with the pandemic for some time. It doesn't feel done with us.
Joe Solomon is a social worker with progressive political views.
And I've found it really challenging to isolate, to be home. I think that it makes some of these conversations harder because we're less used to seeing each other. One thing that I'm excited about this new presidency is that I think that President-elect Biden will help pull us together. I think if there's any silver lining to this grave tragedy, it's that tragedies tend to have potential to pull us together.
I turned next to Terry Triplett DeLauder. She's a conservative friend I've known since we were first graders. We spar on Facebook every now and again. I invited her to our first virtual dinner party, but at the last minute, she couldn't make it. However, she's here for dessert. And Terry says COVID-19 scares her.
I don't like to go out. I very seldom do anyway. And my husband was in the hospital. I could not go see him. I can't imagine not being with him if he took his turn for the worse and was dying and you still weren't allowed in. That's a big fear of mine. It's very difficult to deal with. Mentally, I worry about it all the time. But then I also have people that I know that have had it and they're like, they didn't feel it really.
To me, what's going on is just ridiculous. Mandatory masks.
That's Jay Gould jumping in here. The small business owner is a registered Republican from rural West Virginia. He doesn't see how wearing a mask protects anyone.
I'm an engineer. A virus is 0.15 microns to 0.5 microns. You'd have to have a respirator with a insulators and so forth if you're going to stop a virus. And people with their shirts or their neckerchiefs are just so much BS out there. And to me, it's a bad flu. If you're sick with some other problem and you get it, has it really affected me? No, I don't get out and go so much.
Felicia, how has this been for you? You're up in Parkersburg.
I'm in Parkersburg and Charleston, and today I was in Tyler County and Wetzel County. So I have not had any time off. I have not been able to remain home because we have people to serve in all of those counties.
Felicia Bush is a therapist. She's a self-described moderate Democrat and mother of 4.
So I'm exhausted, but know that I'm doing what I need to do because this pandemic has exacerbated mental health. Our agency is primarily a trauma-focused agency, and this is just another layer of trauma on top of it. One, it's attacking people's ability to make a living, to take care of their family, the anxiety that it's producing. It's just overwhelming. So it is very real, and the impact is severe and significant.
I was grateful to hear that none of my guests or their families had contracted COVID. It was clear from the beginning my guests had their own views, even disagreements about masks or the severity of COVID-19. I thought about how the same facts can evoke different conclusions. Next, we talked about the 2020 election. Margaret Chapman Pomponio is happy about Joe Biden's win. She's politically progressive and the executive director of West Virginia Free. It's a pro-choice group that supports reproductive rights and education. Margaret says she had hoped for more Democratic wins in statewide races.
It was a red wave in West Virginia, and I respect people for working hard on both sides. I know I did, and I think we made a real difference, but not enough.
Voters in West Virginia really showed up for Donald Trump. Again. He won the state this year, just like in 2016, with nearly 70% of the vote.
West Virginia didn't give him his highest margin. Wyoming did. But the last time I looked at the numbers, West Virginia was giving him his second highest margin.
That's my friend Steve Roberts. He's president of the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce and considers himself fiscally conservative, but a centrist on social issues. Steve reminds us there was a time when West Virginia was a reliably blue state. That all changed in 2000 when voters chose George W. Bush for president. And since then, West Virginians have voted Republican for president. Polling data and early voting trends among Republicans helped Steve and his colleagues predict Donald Trump's massive win in West Virginia.
President Trump really has found a way to connect with certain kinds of voters, and we have many of those voters in West Virginia.
Steve says President Trump connects with a certain kind of West Virginia voter. And I wondered who that was. My guest, Jay Gould, says he knows.
Oh, that type of person's me.
Jay is a rural Republican voter. He's owned a mining-related business for decades. He says President Trump gets it.
He's a blue-collar billionaire. He understands a working man. From what little bit of history that I've read about him, in the afternoons, he would go to the job. He would go talk to the laborers and so forth. He understands how a working man thinks.
Hey, Terry, if you can hear us, nod your head. Okay, we cannot hear you.
My guest, Margaret Chapman Pomponio, notices that my childhood friend, Terry Triplett DeLauder, is having trouble with her video link. Terry is a registered Republican, and once her microphone is fixed, she wants to talk about the election.
The whole thing is sketchy, so I'm not conceded yet, and I think there's some errors.
While Democrat Joe Biden is viewed as the president-elect, Donald Trump continues to allege voter fraud and challenge the election results. Terry seems aligned with Trump's views.
Especially Pennsylvania, it's just very odd that they shut down voting in the middle of the night, and then when they come back up, there's thousands of votes. For Biden, none of it made sense. So I think that there's still room. From what I've seen from the Democrats the last 4 years, nothing surprises me. I mean, nothing surprises me with some of the stuff they've done. And I've followed a lot of that very closely. And you do not hear it because the mainstream media does not report it. So I've been highly upset. But what scares me the most is Biden. He's definitely owned by the corporations and the big tech. I think the economy, it'll fail, especially not now. I think that he's not going to do any good for, the average American.
Okay, you got a lot in there, Terry. I just want to see if does anybody else in the dessert party resonate with what Terry is saying or have a reaction to it? Go ahead.
I feel the same way. I'm angry.
That's Jay Gould again. The rural Republican businessman was hoping to see Trump win the election in a landslide.
Yes, I'm angry. And I'm disappointed, but I'm more angry that in this country, we cannot conduct an election and be confident of the outcome 2 weeks after the date of the election. I have no confidence in the election process, sorry. I can take 1,000 people and sit down and tell them to take a pencil and mark a ballot that I made. And at the end of an hour, I could tell you who won and be exactly, right as how people voted. You mark a spot and then you count it. And this they have to send to Barcelona or Frankfurt.
I think we're going off.
Well, that's another issue.
I wasn't sure what Jay's reference to Barcelona and Frankfurt meant, but it seemed to hit a nerve.
We've really gone off the deep end. I feel like we're certainly not just hovering around conspiracy theories anymore. We plunged into that cold water you were talking about earlier, Trey.
Progressive social worker Joe Solomon is hopping in here. In his reference to cold water, well, earlier in the conversation, I mentioned my new hobby of swimming in cold lakes in a wetsuit. He says the election has been decided.
I remember the day it was called, like on November 7th, the majority of the country voted for Biden. And that night, the majority of the country, to them, the election was over because it was called by every major network.
Trey, I'd like to say one thing real quick. Sorry to interrupt.
Not at all.
I just got a notification that Georgia just completed their statewide audit and Biden come out winning it.
This is Joe Slack, a West Virginia Turnpike worker and a community activist in the rural Upper Kanawha Valley. Joe calls himself a moderate Democrat.
I don't believe in all this nonsense about having votes needing counted and all that. I don't believe it. I believe it's just propaganda that's flying, and it's being started at the top level and creating doubt in everyone's mind. But I do want to say that it seems like it's getting a little emotional, and we all need to kind of level it out and try to be cool about it.
The us and them dynamic was pretty clear. Red voters were aligning, and the blues were responding. In that moment, I found myself coming to Jay Gould's defense. Let me just say this. I've only known Jay Gould for about 8-9 months now, and the time that I sat with him in his business up in Montgomery, West Virginia, I felt that he was a sincere man with a true heart. And if he tells me that he doesn't have confidence in this election, I may not agree with him. I may not feel the worry and the concern that he feels, but I believe he believes it. Terry has already talked about how she's nervous and agitated about the outcome of the election. Jay told us that he was angry. But how is it that we're going to move forward from this? Does anybody have a suggestion on that?
I do. Yeah. I have been nervous and anxious for the past 4 years.
Here's Felicia Bush again. She's a therapist and a self-described moderate Democrat.
Well, here's what I know, and I'm no political aficionado. I'm not an expert. But I know that people who look like Jay and Terry are probably going to be all right no matter who's in office. And I know that people like me may not. Being a Black woman, being a Black business owner, being a Black mother of Black sons, I live half my life in a state of terror. And in the past 4 years, I have had to prepare my children to, every time they exit our home, to be on the lookout, because the behavior, the racism has been encouraged. Gasoline has been poured on this racial fire. I believe that Donald Trump has his own motives, and I believe that working blue collar workers is not one of them. My belief of his perspective is that it is a population that he can manipulate. So what I think is, in terms of moving forward, I've lived the past 4 years feeling like you've lived in the past couple of weeks. That anxiety, right? That being churned up, not sure if your interests are going to be considered, not sure what your future looks like. And so I think that we move forward by remembering that at some point or another, all of us have had those feelings. All of us have been uncertain about our future. And the only way that we're going to move forward together in a way that's healthy is to call on that and develop empathy for our fellow American, no matter what color their skin, no matter what economic level they live in, no matter what the difference is. That's the only way we're going to move forward.
Right. Moving forward requires some understanding. And that can come from curiosity. Terry Triplett DeLauder is a Republican who's retired from the insurance industry, and she has some questions for Felicia.
Did you vote for Biden because you don't like Trump? Or did you vote for Biden because of his policies?
I voted for Biden because I trust him, because he's a reasonable person who doesn't promote division, who doesn't promote racism, who can say what he stands for and not prevaricate in order to appeal to a base.
Let me ask you this question. I've often wondered this question and never been able to ask it to someone. I think that the racism started under Obama, definitely with Ferguson. That's where a lot of division in my mind started. I think that the media really portrayed Trump as the racist. The Democrats use that every 4 years as a race card, I think. But what I don't understand is he did more for African Americans and Latinos than any other president since Lincoln.
But he engaged in rhetoric that ratcheted up the racist tendencies that allowed people. I mean, if you had a racist freak flag, he let it fly, and he justified it. He allowed it to happen, and by doing so, he endangered my children.
My guests had plenty of observations and questions for each other on the topic of race. Here's an exchange between Terry Triplett DeLauder and Joe Solomon, a self-described progressive Democrat.
Terry, I don't think that you would call yourself a racist, right? Am I right?
No, absolutely not.
Not at all, right?
Absolutely.
But I think that, Terry, I think folks that vote like you haven't really been terribly listened to, especially white men, the last few years. I would agree with that. Well, maybe not during the Trump years. I think they were plenty listened to then. But as one of those people that kind of can sometimes just ramrod a conversation like I was earlier when I was saying, hey, I think we're just talking, conspiracy theories here. On some level, I take some responsibility for not truly listening, but it is so hard when I hear some of this mushy gush talk. Like, I have the transcript right in front of me.
Wait, what's mushy gush talk?
Like this, interpreting the president's doublespeak, which is meant to sort of pacify his supporters and make him think he's a noble character, but send every message.
I don't. Let me wait. Before we go to
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Terry.
I do want to say this. I personally do not like Trump that well at all. I don't like his demeanor. I don't like his tweets. He's a spoiled brat. But I do like his policies. I look at that more than anything. His foreign policy has done wonders for us. I mean, the China, nobody has ever faced China. He made NATO pay their share. I like that. I mean, it's about time somebody stood up for us. And he stood up for the American people, the workers. I think that on the Democrat side, I think people do like his policies. They just can't get past him.
I don't believe anybody likes his policies on the Democrat side. I couldn't tell you of a policy that he's done that's actually helped West Virginia.
Yeah, I agree with that.
True.
That's Joe Slack, a rural highway maintenance worker and moderate Democrat. Joe blames politicians for setting a bad example and encouraging divisions.
Government officials, the people we elected, first need to understand that they're public servants. The second thing is they need to start working together. They're fighting way too much for there to be unity in the country. They need to work together and come to a common ground instead of either going far left or far right.
Most of my guests say finding common ground is important to them. Steve Roberts of the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce says the 2020 election results show that Americans want moderation and compromise with a move to the center.
The president-elect is the most centrist of all the people who were running for the Democratic nomination. And he's who got nominated and he's who got elected. And I think it's fairly obvious that he has been elected. This is about to head in the direction that Joe Biden, the centrist, has been elected president. And so I think those who want to have a reasonable path forward have got to seek some balance.
How do we find that balance for a reasonable path forward? I asked my guests what one thing they could do to lessen the polarization in this country. Rural Republican businessman Jay Gould, a self-described compassionate conservative, started us off.
Oh boy, I don't see anything that I could do to lessen the polarization. I don't argue with people. I don't quarrel with them. Whenever I said I was angry, I'm angry at the country as a whole for not being able to conduct an election that we can have confidence in. If Biden wins fair and square, no problem with me. I may not like his policies, but no problem with me. And I'd like to make a couple more comments too.
Sure, you go ahead, Jay.
Trump come up with America First. To me, that meant getting rid of globalism. I'm an American. I want America to be first. Now, if some people see that as being racist, I can understand. Who am I to say? If someone feels, how can I phrase this? I don't feel there's systematic racism in this country because I've never experienced it. But if someone else has experienced it, I can't say no, they haven't. If they feel that way, there is definitely systematic racism to them. And it should be addressed. If Trump made statements that made them feel that way, he shouldn't have made those statements. It's just that simple.
Margaret, what's the one thing you can do?
Compassion is a driving thing for me, and it's constant work in progress.
Margaret Chapman Pomponio is executive director of West Virginia Free. It's a pro-choice group that supports reproductive rights and education. She's a progressive Democrat.
I would like to work on, in that vein, not being strident. I see a lot of stridency and self-righteousness on social media that I think can be destructive across the board.
So you see it on both sides.
Yeah, to quote Trump, I see it on both sides. And they're good people on both sides. But yeah, I want to be very mindful about what I do and how I advocate affects other people. And I want to really try to think how each thing that I am doing plays out, not just now, but in the long term. I want to see big and little picture.
Next, my guest Karen Cross offered an idea.
My first thought was more dialogue, but I think more than more dialogue, I need to listen better.
Karen spent much of her life in West Virginia, but now lives in the Washington, D.C. area. She's the political director for National Right to Life, a group advocating pro-life positions for all stages of life. Karen says she's politically independent, but typically votes Republican.
I'm very opinionated. I have very strong opinions. You know, everyone comes at it with their own, sometimes baggage, sometimes just whatever, their own stories, their own history. And if we could listen to each other better and understand where we're coming from, then maybe we can move forward in a way that we're all more comfortable with.
Joe Slack, how about to you? What is one thing that you can do to lessen the polarization in this nation?
I believe we all need to start walking a mile in other people's shoes. before we open our mouth, we need to walk in our shoes.
Joe Slack is a moderate Democrat and a community organizer from the rural Upper Kanawha Valley and works on the West Virginia Turnpike maintenance crew.
Instead of fighting against each other, we need to have conversations like this. The Bible says, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. And it seems like most people are trying to do things to pat themselves on the back and say, look at me, look at me. We need to become a unified country. And in order to do that, we need to quit judging each other.
Last to address the question was Terry Triplett DeLauder. My conservative childhood friend spoke her mind at the start of the dessert party. But at the end of our conversation, Terry said her eyes were opened.
I need to listen more. You know, our founding fathers, everything that they did was civil debate. And we've lost that. We've lost the civil debate. And so we can come back around to that.
How are we doing on that tonight?
We did pretty good. I thought so. My eyes got opened on a couple of things. Well, quite a few things, actually. One of the things is, I need to think about walking in somebody else's shoes. I like that. I do think I need to listen to the other more. But I will tell you, we feel like we're censored by Facebook and Twitter. I feel like that we get shut down a lot. Our voices don't get heard. So I have an issue with that. But I think it starts with listening. I think it starts with doing exactly what we're doing.
Friends, I really have appreciated the conversation. I've appreciated the respect that you've shown each other. So I just want to thank you guys so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye. Everybody be safe. Take care.
Good night.
Bye-bye now.
Coming up after a break, we'll meet two political opponents who believe we can all get along.
Michael is a conservative and I'm a liberal. I have great respect for Michael and what he's done with our organization and happy to call him a friend.
When you work together, you can really develop some wonderful friendships. And this is just kind of an example of what happens when you get folks together and a chance to work on a common direction and mission.
You're listening to Us and Them. This program is supported in part by the West Virginia Humanities Council and the CRC Foundation.
Music lifts us up and brings us together, even when we can't get together in person. Mountain Stage brings you live performances on the air, online, and in our podcast. They remind you how it feels to be in a live audience listening to live music. This is Larry Gross, host of Mountain Stage. Find a link to our stations and our podcast online at mountainstage.org.
Hey, it's Trey, and you're listening to Us and Them from West Virginia Public Broadcasting and PRX. After my conversation over dessert, I wanted to know more about efforts to get people talking across the divide. One of those efforts is called Braver Angels. It's been active since the 2016 election. Its mission is to bring conservatives and liberals together to support civil conversations and maybe even encourage friendships. Thousands of people are attending the group's skills-building workshops and forums. This year, because of the pandemic, the sessions have moved to video conferencing.
Hi, I'm Donna Murphy. I am lead organizer with Braver Angels, and I'm a huge booster of bringing people together across the political divide.
My name is Michael Taggart. I live in Delaware, Ohio, and I'm the co-chair of the Greater Columbus Braver Angels Alliance, bringing people together from the left and the right.
Originally called Better Angels, the organization took its name and inspiration from Abraham Lincoln's first inaugural address in 1861, at the start of the Civil War. Lincoln reminded people, we are not each other's enemy, and asked people to find the better angels of our nature. A trademark dispute led the group to change its name to Braver Angels. It does take courage to talk with someone we don't agree with. Donna Murphy of Braver Angels lives in Virginia and is starting a Braver Angels chapter in West Virginia. She says to preserve our democracy, we need to bridge the divide.
As a liberal, I'm really, really concerned about our democracy right now. It's, normally somebody wins, somebody loses. That's it. The loser gracefully accepts their loss and then goes on to fight another day. Right now, that's not been happening.
Murphy believes the media mirrors our divisions.
We're in two different news universes right now, right? And therefore, the news that I hear and read is entirely different than the news some conservatives may hear and see. I like to get news from the Washington Post and from CNN and yes, MSNBC. So when I then tune into Fox News, it's such cognitive dissonance that it's really hard for me to stick with it for very long. Because when I hear it, I hear a lot of falsehoods and misrepresentations. So we're just in these different universes. When we can't agree on facts and the truth, I have fear for our democracy.
Michael, do you think that the polarization and the tension has been even more intense during the past 4 years, or is that just me thinking it was that way?
I think it is. And I think it goes back to the role of the media and of just fanning flames and promoting fear. And I think the other thing too is we all, it's a temptation to say this one person is dividing the country, that sort of thing.
Well, like in this particular case, President Trump is often cited as somebody who is incredibly divisive.
Yes, and everybody contributes to division in this country. The media does it when they do not share a complete story. And then all of us, as we interact with each other, we traffic in misinformation when we pass information on that we really don't know if it's true, but we're angry, and so we hit that button. We have a responsibility as individuals to take account for in what way we just help ratchet things up. And so we all have a role to play in depolarizing. In other words, are we doing those things that will help ratchet things down? And certainly one is to refrain from mocking or ridiculing or demonizing your fellow citizen, just something that simple.
Braver Angels skills workshops don't focus on creating consensus. Instead, people state their beliefs and maybe learn something about another perspective through conversation. Donna and Michael, who are both volunteer facilitators, say the workshops are structured to encourage discussion. Michael says ground rules are essential.
At the very beginning of most of these bipartisan activities is taking time to go over each of the expectations that are going to guide that discussion. It's what the decorum is going to be. And there's a pause point to confirm before going any further if everyone present is willing to abide by that. So at that point, when everybody confirms that, you have some good group dynamics working for you, where everybody else is expecting to hold each other accountable.
Our bread and butter workshop is called the Red Blue Workshop. That brings together an even number of reds and blues for 4 structured exercises that by the end, people are saying smash stereotypes, okay? But also realizing there are things in common. You are able to ask questions to better understand the other side's view on something. So there's some humility and some vulnerability that can be shared, which is important because that way the other side sees that, okay, you don't think you do have all the answers and you do have concerns on your own side as well.
We need to be more curious and less furious.
That's well said.
We need to see every interaction as an opportunity to be curious about, tell me a little bit about how you formed that opinion. You seem to have a strong opinion. I'd be curious to know how you formed it. And so if we have that kind of curiosity, first of all, we're going to learn a lot, but it's a chance for breakthrough. And I would say that anyone, red or blue, if they're really committed to their cause, should be meeting with people on the opposite side and asking curious questions.
In addition to online workshops, Braver Angels offers a chance to watch or participate in a debate.
It's not a standard debate.
Donna Murphy says a Braver Angels debate isn't about winning and losing. It's about hearing each other.
One big reason that we even came up with this type of debate in the first place, because we found out that conservatives more often like to debate and get into the issues, whereas liberals more often like to dialogue. Okay? I remember when a liberal, after they're hearing about debates, liberal told me, gosh, can't we just call this a dialogue? And I'm going, no, you can't call it a dialogue. We have to call it a debate because this attracts certain types of people who really like that idea of digging into the issues in this way.
Donna Murphy and Michael Taggart say they sometimes have difficulty finding conservatives or Reds to participate in Braver Angels workshops. Reds are often more skeptical about fairness when it comes to workshops with blues. But Michael, himself a Red, a conservative, says a Braver Angels technique is to smash stereotypes.
I had a Braver Angels one-on-one conversation with a politically blue person, and one of the comments I was making is the frustration that for years and years, the stereotype of conservatives as being racist, misogynistic, homophobic, and almost the standard thing, and how frustrating that is. And one of the things I said, one of the reasons I participate in these kind of conversations is I want to support dialogue to help smash some of those stereotypes. And so I shared that perspective, and that led to some really good discussion.
Donna and Michael acknowledge not everyone jumps at the opportunity to smash stereotypes with strangers.
I've invited persons to participate in this kind of activity, and I explain the ground rules and everything. And several people have said, I'm not sure I could abide by it. And I said, well, when you're ready to do that, when you're willing to take the chance and put your toe in the water of bipartisan conversations, this is structured for people like you that are curious. One time I remember someone saying for the reason that they wanted to get involved and try to find out more about the other side was, I'm tired of being angry all the time. Yeah. And just said, I'm just going to bite the bullet. I'm going to take a chance, and I'm going to sign up for one of these bipartisan conversation opportunities.
Aren't we all angry? Aren't we all angry, really? Aren't the blues all angry that even though Biden won, it shouldn't have been so close? And aren't the Reds angry that that actually the election was stolen? It was rigged. We're angry at each other, and we can't survive as a nation when we're all angry at each other. We've got to find a way to be able to come together and talk to each other, and that's what Braver Angels offers.
Michael and Donna, as we close here, I'm wondering, are there certain techniques that you've learned through Braver Angels that you feel that can help us during this tense time?
Yeah, so one technique is to ask questions of curiosity. Now, that's a lot different than gotcha questions. I'm talking about questions where you genuinely would like to know the answer. And then you have to listen, right? While someone is talking, you're not pausing to reload, or you're going to come back at them, right? But you listen, and then you paraphrase back to them what they just said. In order to paraphrase, you have to listen. So listen. Our prime directive is you're not there to change anybody's mind. You're there to listen. When you listen to somebody else, they're more likely to listen to you. So it doesn't mean that you can't talk. What you can do is listen, and then once you've listened to them, you can say, you won't be surprised to learn that I have a different perspective on that. Do you mind if I share that with you?
Michael, it looks like you have something to add. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say sometimes what we can do is to not do certain things. If all of us could recommit to refrain from mocking or ridiculing or demonizing someone on the other side and just choose not to do that, not to engage in those behaviors, we'll be making a contribution in our own sphere of influence, in our own groups. So if, as Donna was saying, if we commit to being more curious, and if we refrain from mocking and ridiculing our fellow citizens I think that's a great start.
Refrain from mocking and ridiculing our fellow citizens. The bar really is low. It makes me sad to think how far apart we are from each other at this moment. Donna Murphy says liberals and conservatives can talk across the divide. They must. Donna showed up to our video call waving pom-poms, one red and one blue, shimmering together in front of the camera. I love her certainty in the Braver Angels process and the way it might get us talking. And with enough cheerleading, maybe it'll happen. Michael and Donna's work with Braver Angels inspires me, gives me hope. More curious and less furious is a pretty good goal. That's why I'm so impressed by my virtual dinner and dessert party crew. Despite these stormy times, they keep accepting my invitations. They show up to the party. They demonstrate that talking takes work. They show us that to listen to each other, such a seemingly small thing, takes great courage. You've been listening to Us and Them. Our team for this episode is me, Trey Kay, Marisa Helms, and Kate Smith. Special thanks to Braver Angels and its volunteers across the country. If you're interested in a conversation across the divide, check out their website at braverangels.org. Michael Lipton and Tristan Lozow wrote and performed the Us and Them show music. Mark Lerner designed our logo. Lelena Price provides us with images for the web. The marvelous people at PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting make Us and Them possible. So do grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the West Virginia Humanities Council, and the CRC Foundation. Us and Them was originally developed with assistance from the Mentorship Program at AIR, the Association of Independents in Radio. We'll see you next time on Us and Them.
Support for this podcast comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
From PRX.